Subclinical vitamin D deficiency precipitates and exacerbates osteoporosis. And the reason for this is that when you're vitamin D deficient and you increase your parathyroid hormone levels, you wind up increasing numbers of osteoclasts, leading to both loss of mineral and matrix, therefore decreasing your bone density. Secondary hyperparathyroidism is the cause. And here's a good example of what's happening. On the left, you see normal bone, and on the right, you see these cavitated areas. When you have secondary hyperparathyroidism, you're removing mineral and matrix, decreasing bone density. Does vitamin D reduce risk of fractures? This is a hotly debated issue, and New England Journal of Medicine, the VITAL study, had concluded that vitamin D is of no benefit for bone health. And I think it's important to recognize that a lot of information and publicity came out of that study. And here's a good example. People should stop taking vitamin D supplements to prevent major diseases or extend life, based on the information in this study and other studies from the VITAL study. And the question is, what was the VITAL study like? And what they did was that they had over 25,000 men and women over the age of 50 and 55, and they divided them into two groups. Approximately 13,000 were assigned to receive vitamin D, 2,000 units a day, and 13 were receiving a placebo group. The question is, was this really a placebo-controlled study? And what was it like for the baseline? Well, it turns out that this is not a placebo-controlled trial because all participants were permitted to take up to 800 units of vitamin D a day. We know that supplement manufacturers put in at least 20 up to 50% more vitamin D. So theoretically, these individuals that were taking this 800 unit supplement could have actually been taking up to 1,200 units a day. What is the mean baseline 25-hydroxy vitamin D level for these 16,000 participants? It turns out to be 30.7 nanograms per ml. What does that mean? What it means is that that blood level is consistent with what is recommended by the Endocrine Society back in 2011 for being able to have maximum bone health. The study was randomized, and of that 16,000, 64.7% of the total 25,000 involved in the study were vitamin D sufficient at the beginning of the trial. What percent were less than 20 nanograms per ml? And why that number? Because less than 20 nanograms per ml was considered to be inadequate for maximum bone health by the Institute of Medicine. And so if you look at the numbers, 2,161 individuals, 12.9% had blood levels of less than 20 nanograms per ml. And what does that translate to? That means 87.1% of the total group in that study were considered to have maximum bone health based on the Institute of Medicine's recommendation. So think about this. 87.1% were considered to be vitamin D sufficient based on the Institute of Medicine's recommendation, as well as the recommendation from the 2024 Endocrine Society guidelines. What percent were vitamin D deficient based on the definition by the Institute of Medicine, i.e., 25-hydroxy D concentration less than 12 nanograms per ml? And the answer is only 2.4%. So only 2.4% were less than 12 nanograms per ml, considered to be vitamin D deficient based on the Institute of Medicine's recommendation. So now think about this. When you look at the plot of placebo versus vitamin D, you see no difference. And so you would think that therefore vitamin D has no impact on your bone health. However, it's important to recognize that 87.1% were considered to be vitamin D sufficient at baseline, based on the recommendation from the Institute of Medicine and now the 2024 guidelines. And so the conclusion is that vitamin D supplementation did not result in significantly lower risk of fractures than the placebo among generally healthy midlife and older adults who were not selected for vitamin D deficiency. They were not selected for low bone mass. They were not selected for having osteoporosis. And most importantly, a majority of them were vitamin D sufficient, even based on the Endocrine Society practice guidelines of 2011. And so therefore, this should not be considered as a randomized controlled placebo trial, since the placebo group was getting at least 800 up to 1,200 units of vitamin D a day. Thank you.